Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we have to talk about Uber because we all really need to stop using Uber, and I've done similar videos on Uber in the past about just how awful it is. Now it's getting worse because they are turning the data mining up to 11. Now this is coming from Vice, or Motherboard by Vice, and this is super important, so heads up all you Uber users and drivers. Uber is rolling out a targeted ad system that will let companies serve ads to you in the Uber app based on the specific places that you have been, according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, this announcement obviously gives serious privacy concerns, over Uber, because Uber basically just sucks up all of your location data, knows exactly the destination that you're traveling to using its app. And the service is often used for trips when people cannot drive themselves to things like the doctor's office or abortion clinics, religious or cultural centers, those kinds of things. Basically, sensitive places. Uber knows where you're going, and that's a huge problem. Now, according to Chris Gilliard, he's a Just Tech fellow at the Social Science Research Council, and I quote him in this article by Vice: Uber never misses an opportunity to push the boundaries on how extractive and exploitative a company is allowed to be. Using the granular details gleaned from people's travels as fodder for advertising poses a threat to anyone who doesn't want the intimate details of where they worship, who they date, or what medical conditions they have been sold, or what medical conditions they have being sold to the highest bidder. This news reaffirms that Uber is a surveillance company masquerading as a transportation company, and that is, I believe, 100% correct. Their culture from the start has been horrible, and even though they're under new management, they're not escaping that, and these practices continue. Now, in response, basically two questions by Motherboard, an Uber spokesperson talking to them said, and I quote, "The information that Uber shares with such advertisers is limited to the aggregated information or data necessary to access the effectiveness of campaigns. Example, the percentage of users who clicked on an ad or the number of users who visit the retail locations of advertisers using our platform. Users can opt out of certain disclosures in the company's privacy center." Now, the problem with all of this is obviously any anonymous data that they attempt to aggregate can be de-anonymized. We've seen that over and over and over. And Uber has a long track record of privacy violations dating back basically to their founder, when they were there in early days, Travis Kalanick. I've talked about this. In the mid 2010s, they took basically almost no effort to protect sensitive data, including geolocation information, to the extent, and I quote Vice directly, that virtually any employee and even a potentially job interviewee could view it. In the company's early days, it displayed a quote-unquote God view in its offices, showing the locations of specific users in front of basically company guests during a launch party. They know where everybody is that is using that app at all times. Now, Uber later used the same tool to track journalists and celebrities. In 2016, Uber's chief security officer, Joe Sullivan, basically paid, if you recall, an attacker $100,000 to delete essentially 57 million customers' credit card information that was stolen. They tried to cover that up, not to mention whistleblowers coming forth on just the shady and horrible tactics that they used, basically touting laws, deleting data. They had an entire emergency protocol to basically wipe things from local countries as they were attempting to bribe politicians. All these kinds of things has all come out. You do not have to take my word for it. This is not my opinion. These are the whistleblowers that have said all of these things, and we have the evidence to back this thing up by virtue of tweets, text, all of this. So understand that our phones in and of itself are tracking us at all times. So if you're on your cellular carrier, knows where your geolocation is. Google probably knows where your geolocation is. If you have Facebook or Apple products or any one of these, they know essentially where you are at any given time. All of them data mine you. Uber does the same thing as well. And so while we're in this vein, we do have options. There are other, car share platforms. Obviously, they are the largest by sheer force of will, cramming it down basically every government's throat where they want it to be. But nevertheless, this is a huge problem. And so as we are looking at this, if you are going into, let's say, I don't know, a cancer center treatment or whatever, they know exactly where you're going, what you're doing. How are they not just going to advertise to you, but how are they actually going to use that data in some way, shape, or form? In the same way that, life insurance companies can data mine you in Facebook. And if you tell a life insurance company, well, I lead a very sedentary life, and your Facebook shows you jumping out of airplanes and wrestling alligators or something like that, obviously the life insurance company might void your claims. They may not believe that you live a rather sedentary life, and Facebook gives them that privilege, and the state of New York basically allowed that to happen through law. So these are the things that we are talking about. Keeping the data that is intrinsically yours is a huge thing. Ever since that data breach, for the record, I don't use Uber. I've been in Ubers that other people have gotten, but I refuse to use Uber. I don't have their app on my phone. I've got to practice what I preach. I got to be consistent, and I really wish that everybody would take a good hard look at just how bad Uber has been, in these kinds of things, not just on the data mining and location processing, of which they have a ton of intimate data on you, but just as a culture and a company themselves. I think it's time to ditch Uber. Join me in that revolution. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. Ring that bell. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.